Hi everyone, this is lecture 25, Independent Assortment, and the material comes from chapter 11, page 307 to 312. Well, lately we've talked about Mendelian genetics, and in that lecture, Mendel crossed true breeding strains that were differing in one trait, for example, flower color, purple versus white. Mendel also did a lot of crosses with dihybrid crosses, where he took flowers that or plants that differed in two traits, for example, flower color and stem height. And he discovered a principle called independent assortment, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So a few questions to begin. Mendel's law of independent assortment is what? And mark all correct choices. Number 2, full pod shape, capital F, is dominant to constricted pod shape, lowercase f, and yellow pod color, capital Y, is dominant to green pod color, lowercase y, in pea plants. What is the genotype of a true breeding yellow plant with a constricted pod? Number 3, let P, capital P, equal dominant purple flower allele, and lowercase p equal recessive white flower allele, while capital T equals dominant tall plant allele, and lowercase t equals recessive short plant allele. Of the 16 possible gamete combinations in a dihybrid cross of big P, big T, little t, how many would have the phenotype of white flowers and short plant? So, like I said, many of Mendel's crosses were not monohybrid like we talked about last time, but dihybrid, where two true breeding strains were crossed together to generate an F1 hybrid or heterozygous, but two traits. For example, again, flower color, he looked at seed color, he looked at seed shape, he looked at pod color, he looked at pod shape, height of the plant, and so on. He discovered independent assortment, which basically means that the two traits would not co-segregate together. The flower color, for example, would behave independently of the other traits. We now know that this is due to chromosomes lining up independently on the metaphase axis during meiosis. Remember our discussion about coin flipping, how you can get heads or tails. Well, maternal and paternal chromosomes can go into two different daughter cells, and they can go randomly into those two different daughter cells, which give you lots of different combinations. So his principle of independent assortment is saying that during gamete formation, unit factors segregate independently of each other. And of course, unit factors here mean genes and, by extension, chromosomes. Independent assortment occurs in metaphase 1. The homologous chromosomes pair up, shown here as a yellow and blue pair, and green and orange. And they can either align themselves this direction, shown on the bottom left, yellow on the left, green on the left, or in this configuration, shown blue on the left and green on the left. Those two combinations give you different kinds of gametes. If alleles are found on these chromosomes, for example, purple versus white, tall versus short, they will arrange into gametes in independent ways. So you could have purple and tall, purple and short, white and tall, and white and short. With one pair of chromosomes, there can be two genetically distinct offspring. Remember that each chromosome has a half probability of going into a particular daughter cell. You multiply that half probability for every chromosome set that you are dealing with, so that with two pairs of chromosomes, there can be 4 different possible gametes, which are shown down here at the bottom. This one, this one, this one, and this one. We have a general formula. Again, this is going back to the exponents. You do have to use exponents in this class. The number of genetically distinct gametes then would equal 2 raised to the power of n, where n is the haploid number. Here is a dihybrid cross showing a true breeding yellow smooth seed plant crossed with a wrinkled green seed plant. They are true breeding because they are homozygous. Big S for smooth smooth, big Y for yellow yellow. Or little s for wrinkled and little y for green. Note that the symbol is referring to the dominant allele. When haploid gametes are produced, one of each of the parent's chromosomes will be distributed into the gamete, so that the gamete should have a chromosome that has the S and the Y gene. Now, upon hybridization, the F1 generation, self-fertilization, you would generate the F1 that's completely hybrid, completely heterozygous, big S, big Y, little y. That's simply pairing up one of each of these chromosomes from the two gametes and fertilizing them. Completing the dihybrid cross then is when you cross the F1s together to generate an F2. So here are the gametes that could possibly be made from the first parent. Remember, there is 2 sets of chromosomes, 2 sets of genes, so 4 possible gametes shown here and shown here. The gametes can have big S, big Y, big S, little s, big Y, or little s, little y. Fertilization then is simply forming a Punnett square in this case, where each gamete will be paired with its respective gamete so that you have a combinatorial effect shown here in this diagram. The Punnett square shows you that each gamete, which is shown here along the X and the Y axes, can pair up in equal probability with the other gametes from the other individual, or in the case of from the other individual. Then, simply figuring out which alleles are dominant will give you the phenotype ratios that you would see here. For example, we know that smooth is dominant to wrinkled and yellow is dominant to green. So any individual in the F2 generation that has the smooth allele or the yellow allele will show that trait. In order to have the recessive trait, for example green, the plant must have 2 of the little y alleles. Or wrinkled must have 2 of the little s alleles. The phenotype ratios that Mendel found were 9 to 3 to 3 to 1. Another way to say that is 9/16 of the offspring were smooth and yellow, dominant, dominant. 3/16 were smooth and green, dominant, recessive. 3/16 were recessive, dominant, wrinkled, and yellow. But only 1/16 was recessive, recessive, wrinkled, and green. Okay, we'll work some problems in class, so I will see you then.